Marijuana, weed, cannabis. I will be referring to this in a variety of ways. This video is for educational purposes only. You will be learning the history, the types, the effects, and the legalization of marijuana. Sit back, relax, and take a hit. The many uses of cannabis have been known and appreciated for centuries. Starting around 10,000 BCE, Central Asian cultures cultivated the indigenous hemp plant to make rope and fabric. Around 8,000 BC, cannabis became the important raw material for essential trade goods like clothing, shoes, and paper for China, Japan, and Korea. So around 3000 BCE to 2000 BCE, the Chinese Emperor Xianyang refers to cannabis the first time in recorded history in 2727, and it was used as a tea to treat an array of illnesses. About 1,000 years later, it's used for medical and religion use in India as well. Records and documents indicate prevalent cannabis use by the Chinese physicians by the turn of the 1st century. In the 1100s, hash is introduced to the Muslim world as edible, beginning in Iran, spreading to the Egyptian Sufis. Through exploration and trade, cannabis cultivation spreads to Africa via Arab and Hindu travelers. In the early 1600s, hemp plants grow wildly and successfully in the American South. Virginia considers hemp a form of currency and passes a law in 1619 that requires all farms in the colony to grow it. Once King Cotton takes over the South, the need for hemp diminishes greatly. In the mid-1800s, as hemp products dwindle in the US, medical use becomes more popular. In the Portuguese, Brazil enslaves people who use cannabis for its psychoactive properties, which triggered the first known restricted cannabis usage. Meanwhile, in British colonies like Jamaica, and indentured servants from India introduced seedlings of the cannabis indica, ganja, which is widely used for the term marijuana. In 1913, Jamaica outlaws marijuana with the passage of the Ganja Law. In 1914, the recreational marijuana use, which was likely brought by fleeing the Mexican Revolution, is banned in El Paso, Texas as a legal attack on immigration. El Paso is the first city to pass an ordinance against marijuana use. In about 1937, after various states outlawed the consumption of marijuana, beginning with California, the Marijuana Tax Act criminalizes the sale of the plant, effectively banning it from U.S. soil. In 1970, the Marijuana Tax Act is replaced by the Controlled Substance Act and signed into law by Richard Nixon. It establishes a drug policy that ranks substances according to their addiction and degree of danger. At this point in time, marijuana is classed as a Schedule I drug, the most restrictive category. California, which was the first U.S. state to outlaw cannabis, becomes the first state to legalize medical marijuana. Other states including Nevada, Vermont, and Washington following its lead. In 2015, marijuana is decriminalized in Jamaica. You may use, cultivate, and possess the drug in small amounts. At the point of writing the script, 18 states allowed the recreational use of marijuana, which I think is absolutely insane. It really shows you how the world was at one time and what it is today. The two species of cannabis is cannabis sativa and cannabis indica. The high induces from sativa strains are uplifting, energizing, and even euphoric. You would use this to focus on a project. The indica strain induces a high that's more mellow and relaxing, as opposed to the head high caused by sativa. Indica affects the entire body, making it a useful sleep aid and a pain reliever. Sativa plants are typically taller with thin leaves and feathery buds. Indica plants tend to be shorter with wide leaves and dense buds. The easiest way to remember is, for me, is that indica could leave you in the couch. Haha. What are the effects of smoking? Laughter. One of the best effects is the tendency to make you laugh. usually at ridiculous things. Although the science is largely unproven, the likely culprit is that the THC influence on the left temporal and right frontal lobes of the brain, the areas that are associated with laughter. Munchies. People who smoke at all are no doubt familiar with the sudden onset of hunger you get after getting high. Well, THC interact with the hypothalamus, which is the area of the brain that controls appetite. They also affect the receptors in the olfactory system, making the smell of food more intense. Memory and time perception. Although it won't turn you into a hippie, it will likely affect your short-term memory and perception of time. It isn't uncommon to forget what you were just talking about, or drift off in a thought during a conversation, or feel like you've been doing something for an hour, though it has in fact only been 5 minutes. For me, if you've used the plant long enough, this wouldn't be a problem, because you have a tendency to be used to it. Paranoia. Most people who have smoked have had at least one paranoia experience. The experiences vary, depending on the THC in your system and the environment. Some people argue edibles give a stronger feeling, whereas some people don't ever feel it. Until you know your tolerance of it, start with a small amount. I'm sure there are plenty of others, but these were the main ones that I found, or am used to. So if you have made it this far into the video, we have looked at the straight up history of the plant, what it does to you. Now, let's talk about the way that it's taken. 1000 CE. Bongs. If you were like me, you would have thought bongs were a fairly recent discovery in the 420 scene. However, I couldn't have been more wrong, as these were golden and we don't even get them nowadays. I mean, look, they're crazy. 1320 CE. Cannabis pipes. One of the first and oldest traces of cannabis smoking pipes dates back all the way around 1320 CE. In the 70s, archaeologists discovered what appeared to be traditional smoking pipes in the area of Ethiopia. Similar to the bongs found in Russia, these pipes contained small traces of black resin inside the bowl piece. This substance was tested immediately and was found to be cannabis. After all those years, it still contained some THC. As the centuries progressed, people stayed smoking out of pipes and adding cannabis to their foods. In the 1800s, however, something new is introduced to the cannabis scene: joints. While ancient civilizations had used palm leaf and tobacco leaves as wraps for their herbs for centuries, there hasn't been evidence of what they specifically stuffed the leaves with. What we next hit is what I call the Renaissance era of marijuana, the 1980s and 90s, blunts and vaporizers. Throughout the 20th century, cannabis used an experience of tumultuous run. During the beginning of the 1900s in the United States, cannabis and its constituents were still being celebrated and widely enjoyed. However, as time progressed and racist stereotypes began to encase the public's perception of cannabis, regulation and demonization hit harder than ever. Nonetheless, during this time, we still saw brave souls continue to work with the plant, crafting new and unique ways to smoke. Soon, people were replacing the insides of the cigars with cannabis, smoking some of the first blunts without ever knowing it. Even more revolutionary, though, was the production of the vaporizers in the 90s. The 2000s, non-tobacco wraps and pre-rolled cones. Slowly but surely, at the turn of the century, cannabis stigma was starting to change. Once again, people began understanding the potential benefits of the plant. People began getting creative with the ways to smoke weed. While the market already had a few rolling papers and blunt wrap options, a need for cleaner, tobacco-free smoke was obvious. So, where do we go from here? In conclusion, it baffles me that drugs like alcohol and tobacco runs free throughout the US and other countries as well. They appear much more dangerous and have a lot more side effects than anything cannabis could do. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. If you would like to see more content like this, please let me know in the comments and hit that like button. Take a hit, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.